a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being excellent, I would say they made something like 7. I think that in terms of controlling inflation, to a certain extent, this administration was able to temper. It could have been worse.
As you said, the Marcos administration got a bit unlucky in the sense that they came into power in this time when global inflation is on the rise. But at the same time, the Marcos administration is not helpless to address many of these issues, and the president is actually in a good position to address inflation.
The first 100 days of any president should hold promise, primarily because in our case, we have a president who overwhelmingly won with a very huge mandate. But then, it also comes with huge expectations. I'm not so sure if I'm going to give him a satisfactory assessment of his first 100 days. Mainly because I'm looking for a solution that is innovative. It has a huge impact.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. The big story tonight.
4 out of 10. That's how a political analyst rated Ferdinand Marcos Jr. for his first 100 days as president.
But Marcos Jr.'s cabinet members sing praises for the first 3 months of BBM's term. Faith Del Mundo with the big story.
While President Bongbong Marcos shows pride for a quote, functional government that his administration has achieved for the first 100 days in Malacanang, political analyst and UP professor Jean Encinas Franco gave the president 4 out of 10. Franco said that's because the administration has failed to craft a concrete plan for the next 6 years.
We have a president who overwhelmingly won with a very huge mandate. But then, it also comes with huge expectations. I'm not so sure if I'm going to give him a satisfactory assessment of his first 100 days. Mainly because I'm looking for a solution that is innovative and big in the sense that it has a huge impact. It will be remembered by people in the next 6 years.
Trade Secretary Alfredo Pascual, on the other hand, believes that the first 100 days of the president have been fruitful. He said trade commitments that they have earned from the president's trip in Indonesia, Singapore, and the U.S. are the best achievements of the economic so far.
We've been meeting every week, when we're here. I mean, it's a lot of work. And on Monday, I will make a presentation to the president on the follow-up on the investment prospects that we have identified. There are, of course, concerns that have to be ironed out. Sa pag-uusapan namin, maraming trabaho, hindi to laro,
Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin earlier described the first 3 months of President Marcos as inspiring. But ordinary Filipinos are divided on their assessments.
Yun yung mga nagustuhan ko sa kanya, yung may mga platform na siya sa pagbabago ng ng bansa natin. Kagaya ng subway, yun, agriculture.
Improve yung mga dapat salary. Salary tsaka yung mga bill ng kuryente, tubig. Yun ang number 1 na kailangan naming mahihirap eh.
For News 5, Faith Del Mundo, we are One News.
Attorney Cheloy Garafil has stepped down as chairperson of the LTFRB, but she will remain part of the Marcos administration. This comes after she accepted the offer to serve as the officer in charge and undersecretary of the Office of the Press Secretary. Garafil was appointed by President Bongbong Marcos to lead the LTFRB back in June. Prior to that, she served as service director at the Committee on Rules of the House of Representatives. She also served as state solicitor for the Office of the Solicitor General, as well as prosecutor for the Department of Justice. Meanwhile, the Education Department is mulling over the possibility of extending the implementation of blended learning beyond November. Marian Enriquez tells us why in this report.
Vice President and Education Chief Sara Duterte will mark her first 100 days in office. When asked about her greatest accomplishment so far, the Vice President said it's to have face-to-face classes back after more than 2 years under the pandemic.
Napakahalaga na nabalik natin ang option ang mag-conduct ng 5 days in-person classes. And meron tayong mga schools right now na ganun nga yung ginagawa nila dahil nakita din nila na mas napapadali ang pagtuturo nila.
The DepEd has allowed schools to hold limited in-person classes since August, and come November, schools will have to implement full face-to-face classes. But that may still change as talks are underway for the possible extension of blended learning. This is after the agency confirmed that COVID-19 infections have been recorded in some schools.
Meron kaming report na ginagawa ngayon para sa Pangulong Marcos at makapagdesisyon siya kung ano po yung ways forward natin with regard to the options na binibigay natin sa ating mga eskwelahan.
Despite this, the DepEd chief says the important thing is the country is now able to respond accordingly to any uptick in COVID cases.
Ang mahalaga lang sa pandemic is that we ensure that yung bakuna ay available para sa ating mga citizens. And pangalawa, yung gamot na Molnupiravir at Paxlovid. Pangatlo, yung ating critical care capacities ng ating mga hospitals ay hindi na overwhelm.
As for schools damaged by natural calamities, the agency said they continue to provide temporary learning spaces.
Nagpapatuloy naman po yung mga learning ng ating mga learners kasi kahit naman po na may kakulangan man sa infrastructure, nag-i-implement naman po tayo as per protocol ng alternative delivery modes.
The DepEd added that they are now finalizing a budget wish list for Congress. The department earlier vowed to realign funds in order to restore funding for special education programs or SPED. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
After the break, we'll talk to Director Rino Abad of the Oil Industry Management Bureau to discuss the government's plan to address the looming fuel price hike next week. That and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
Protests and an internet cutoff. The group includes the Interior and Communications Ministers. The protests began last month over the death in police custody of 22-year-old Masa Amini, who was arrested for allegedly flouting Islamic dress codes. The move reflects a push by the Biden administration to more forcefully support the protests. Swedish investigators are blaming explosions for damage to the Nord Stream pipeline delivering natural gas from Russia. The Swedish Security Service says its investigation has increased suspicions of sabotage, but didn't indicate how the detonations happened or who might be responsible. Danish and German officials are also investigating, and Nord Stream says it's cooperating fully. President Biden is pardoning thousands of Americans convicted for possession of marijuana and is ordering a review of its legal status. In a major step towards decriminalizing the plant, he's issued a blanket pardon for all prior federal charges of simple possession and will urge governors to do the same for state offenses. The biggest ETF investing in U.S. cannabis companies surged 34% in an hour on the news. The U.S. Department of Justice is investigating a London-based oil trading company for potential manipulation of fuel prices. Sources say Dare International has been under scrutiny since at least last year. One focus of the inquiry is Dare's activity during a key trading window known as the market on close. We're told the Commodity Futures Trading Commission is also looking into potential manipulation. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has proposed changes for the World Bank and regional development banks to move beyond country-specific loans. The changes look to address global threats and speed up the flow of private capital to emerging economies. Yellen has endorsed the notion that multilateral development banks can substantially increase their lending without significantly increasing risk. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Vonnie Quinn. This is Bloomberg.
If I work abroad, my abilities can be expanded, unlike here.
Healthcare systems around the world are experiencing a nurse shortage as many protest low wages and long hours. Others threatening to quit after years of working under the pandemic. That means governments are competing to attract talent from countries like the Philippines, the world's largest exporter of nurses. Elaine Torres is one of thousands of young Filipinos responding to the calls. She juggles a 6-hour commute 6 days a week to attend nursing school with the dream of working overseas for a better pay and lifestyle.
I decided to enroll in nursing school since last year, 2021. I'm considering job overseas. I'm looking forward po in working in New Zealand.
The shortage for nurses is on track to more than double from pre-pandemic levels to reach 13 million people globally. Countries are implementing initiatives to welcome foreign workers as quickly as possible. Germany aims to recruit Filipino nurses by offering to pay for travel expenses, language training, and helping find...
You're watching The Big Story here on One News. Oil prices are expected to rise next week after the OPEC announced the biggest cut to oil production since the start of the pandemic. Camille Samonte with the story.
Members of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, and its allies have agreed to cut oil production by 2 million barrels per day. This is equivalent to 2% of the global oil supply, the biggest oil production cut since the pandemic. OPEC's de facto leader, Saudi Arabia, said the cut of 2 million barrels per day was necessary due to rising interest rates in the West and the weaker global economy. This comes despite pleas from the U.S. and other countries to pump more after oil prices spiked due to supply disruptions from the Russia-Ukraine war. In a statement, the White House said that U.S. President Joe Biden was disappointed by the short-sighted decision. In the past months, oil prices have gone down due to decreasing global demand. But because of the oil production cut, petroleum prices are expected to go up once again.
Biglaan po ang desisyon nila ay magbabawas sila ng 2 million barrels per day. Ito'y napakalaki po kumpara doon sa nauna nilang testing noong October na 100,000 barrels lang. So, ito'y inaasahan po natin na magpukos po nung reverse ng trend instead na rollback.
Gasoline prices are expected to go up next week by 1 peso per liter, while a 4 pesos increase is expected for diesel. Kerosene prices are also expected to go up by 2 pesos. Senate President Mig Zubiri has expressed his concern over the cut in oil production, which will likely push commodity prices higher.
That's unfair to non-oil producing countries. Kawawang-kawawa tayo dyan. Sa binanggit po nilang controls of 2 million barrels a day less output, it will affect the prices of fuel, which will again increase our pump prices on a local level. And it will trigger inflationary.
For News 5, Camille Samonte, we are One News.
Here to discuss what the oil production cut will mean for the Philippines, we have with us on the line Department of Energy Oil Industry Management Bureau Director Rino Abad. Mr. Abad, welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening, Christian and Robbie. Good evening sa ating mga kababayan po.
Sir, first of all, are we just passive and helpless here in the face of OPEC's plans? How does it work with respect to, it was their decision, countries like the Philippines, gaya nga po ng sinabi ni Senator Mig Zubiri, that's unfair for non-oil exporting countries. But nonetheless, we are in that category. What does that mean? Are we just helpless and taking this, and what options do we actually have?
Well, actually, the component of the OPEC Plus, when we talk about supply, global supply of petroleum products, is around 40%. So that figure would amount to have really an influence on how the price, how the supply would shape up in any decision that this OPEC Plus would actually do. Around 42 million barrels of crude oil per day now being planned to have a cut of around 2 million barrels per day for November. So, well, the issue here is that for the past 2 months, there's a constant increase in supply, and there's at the same time, because of the interest hikes implemented by European Central Bank, the UK, and of course the US, slowly the demand has really gone down, and we end up having this report as of August that there is now actually an oversupply. So that's the definite consideration for OPEC Plus. That's number one. Second, I think OPEC Plus now believes that there is now a real chance of not stopping this demand decline because of the anticipation that U.S. Federal Reserve is saying that they're just cutting off the growth of the economic activity by doing this interest hike. But as far as the other parts of the globe is concerned, I think this is now affecting not only the growth but the actual real economy towards the end of the fourth quarter, probably for next year. There's an anticipation, there's an analysis that there could have been the possibility of having a recession is actually real. So these are considerations that are being anticipated by OPEC Plus. So at the same time, we're also getting this report that Russian oil, which is estimated to be removed as estimated by International Energy Agency to the volume of around 1.5, is actually will not actually happen because of the resiliency of Russian oil to go to other markets like India, China, most of Southeast Asia. So there is really an oversupply that is being expected. There is a real decline in demand. So this is how OPEC is treating the situation.
Given the move of OPEC Plus, sabi nyo nga po hindi na po ito bago. Before they cut supply by 100,000 barrels, now it's 2 million barrels per day. By how big should we expect oil prices to rise, and what should we prepare for, not just in the coming week, but in the coming months?
Yes, Ma'am Richin. Initially, of course, this pronouncement, this much volume would actually result to a reverse of the ongoing trend of decline. Rather, we will be expecting, of course, an increase by next week. But as to the question whether the price increase will be sustained, needs a follow-through from the OPEC Plus, because as of August, they cannot even comply with their quota target by as much as 5.3 million barrels per day of crude oil supply. So even that much, they cannot even comply with that. And now they're talking about adding up a decline of another 2 million. That would mean around 7.2 of non-production on these 23 member countries. But so it will really eat up to their expected revenue. So that's another consideration vis-a-vis the revenue, vis-a-vis the follow-through in the next coming week. So if they can follow through, then we could expect that the price would continue to increase. But if they cannot follow through with that, because they are now down by 5.3 in the first place, and they will be adding up around 2 million more per day, then the price and then the market will actually realize that these are just statements at this point in time.
Sir, last question na lang po. Is it strictly a price matter that we are monitoring and bracing for? It's not necessarily a supply problem. And supply-wise, just keeping it the conversation strictly on supply, what's the situation heading for the rest of the year and towards the end of the year?
Well, ang epekto kasi nung 2 million na pronouncement, in actuality, if they could really implement that, would just erase the oversupply now of around the estimate of OPEC is around 1.5, the estimate of McKinsey report is around 1.9. So that would just even out the supply-demand balance. But of course, again, the question is, could they follow through with that 2 million? Otherwise, the market will end up realizing that, again, the demand, you cannot stop the decline of the demand because US, Europe, UK are really continuing their interest hike. So this is now a question if OPEC can follow through with the production cut of around 2 million. If they cannot, then we will be expecting that the market will realize that the decline will continue in the demand will continue, but the supply, if the supply cannot follow through, then at least we cannot expect that the price will continue to increase.
Okay, Director Abad, maraming salamat po. That was Oil Industry Management Bureau Director Rino Abad.
The Agriculture Department has eased on fears of a possible rice shortage. DA Assistant Secretary Christine Evangelista said that based on their supply outlook, the country has more than enough rice supply. Still, they plan on looking at the extent of damage caused by the recent typhoons. Evangelista added that the DA is continuing its cash assistance for farmers.
Tuloy-tuloy po ang pagbigay natin ng mga ayuda sa ating mga magsasaka. So lahat ng interventions, we are implementing it right now, and we are also looking into other interventions po para po matulungan ang ating mga rice farmers.
Evangelista, meanwhile, also pointed out that the DA has already factored in the possible effects of tropical cyclones in the country's rice supply. Latest data from the DA showed that over 1 billion pesos worth of crops and other agricultural products were destroyed due to Super Typhoon Kanding. Right after the break, the PNP has identified a person of interest in the killing of radio broadcaster Percy Lapid. We'll look into that when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
Commerce brand today is way different than what it used to be a decade ago. In the late aughts, a generation of entrepreneurs did something completely new. They sold stuff without stores. They used social media to post splashy ads. They cut out the middleman. And it was cheaper for shoppers. People loved it. Niche brands popped up to sell very specific products like razors, eyeglasses, dog toys, suitcases, and mattresses. Silicon Valley poured billions of dollars into these direct-to-consumer brands. But the pandemic pushed retailers to get smart with their e-commerce strategies. At the same time, Apple tightened up their privacy policy, making it harder for brands to connect with their shoppers. Plus, investors now want to make sure these businesses they bet on are actually making money. So I wanted to figure out what's next for these brands. I talked to retail experts and venture capitalists, and here's the advice they give entrepreneurs looking to start a D2C brand today. Know that you're going to end up in a store. It's inevitable. Shoppers still like going into physical locations, and that's how you reach the folks who aren't on social media. Be clear about your growth goals, and make sure your investors agree on them too. Not every brand is destined to reach unicorn status, and that's okay. It's more important to be profitable with sustainable growth. Innovate. Don't just repackage an existing product so that it looks more hip. People want something more. Try to solve a real-life problem. Shoppers say they want to buy stuff that makes them feel like they're doing the right thing. So, does your product reduce climate change? Is it more nutritious than other options out there? The consumer space can go a long way in addressing the most pressing issues. So, what's your contribution going to be? The D2C market has changed. The most successful brands are those who go beyond e-commerce and make themselves a necessity in the lives of their customers.
AP Showbiz Minute. Flowers are being laid for country icon Loretta Lynn following her death on Tuesday, aged 90. Tributes to the star are being left on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at the star she was honoured with in 1978. In a court filing, Angelina Jolie alleges that Brad Pitt grabbed her by the head, shook her, then choked one of their children and struck another when they...
You're still watching The Big Story here on One News. Interior Secretary Benher Abalos has revealed to the media photos of persons of interest in the Percy Lapid murder case. 2 suspects were identified through various CCTV and dashcam footage obtained by the PNP Special Investigation Task Group. The riding in tandem was caught shooting Lapid from the driver's side of his vehicle before escaping the crime scene through the Alabang-Zapote Road. Abalos described the gunmen as professional killers who carefully studied the victim's route and schedule. The motive for the killing remains unknown, but for now, the DILG and the PNP have both released orders to their personnel to protect members of media from other attacks. The government is set to conduct a threat assessment on the matter as well as a dialogue with media practitioners.
Sa mga journalists na nakikinig ngayon, huwag kayong mag-alala. No? Andiyan ang kapulisyahan ninyo, maaga pa lang. They're now trying to classify journalists, yung mga A, B, and C, yung mga talagang sabihin na natin in terms of threats. No? Kaya huwag kayong mahiya. Bukas ang himpilan ng kapulisyahan.
3 days after her resignation as press secretary, Trixie Cruz Angeles made her first public appearance as a private citizen at a cultural event in Baguio. Laila Panghilinan with the details.
Earlier this week, attorney Trixie Cruz Angeles officially stepped down from her post as press secretary and is now back to being a regular citizen. She also posted on social media last Tuesday that she will be going on a road trip, but did not mention her destination. In her first public appearance following her resignation, attorney Angeles was spotted by News 5 attending the 12th Tang-Awan International Arts Festival in Baguio, where she was invited as guest of honor. Angeles was sporting a dark red long-sleeve blouse and jeans, distant from her usual attire as the palace spokesperson. More than 100 artists and cultural workers attended the festival. For the former press secretary, nothing beats experiencing the event in person, as the annual festival was only held online over the past 2 years due to the pandemic.
Iba talaga yung face-to-face. Iba talaga yung magkakasama tayo.
This year, the theme of the festival is Hapot di Amod, or the voices of our ancestors, which highlights the importance of looking back to the stories of those who came before us.
Malaki talaga dapat ang papel na gampanan ng ating nakaraan kasi dito po tayo kumukuha ng inspirasyon at dito po natin kinukuha ang tradisyon.
Panel members spoke about how the pandemic brought out the creativity of Filipinos as it allowed artists to hone their crafts in their homes during lockdowns. Angeles even gave suggestions on how to maintain or elevate this cultural phenomenon.
We were indoors most of the time, limited yung paglalabas natin. Nagkaroon ng introspection, nagkaroon ng pagkakataon para mas magsulat, gumawa ng poetry, gumawa ng visual arts, at meron mga nakikita natin, mayroong mga gumaling dun sa expression. Sana ma-motivate sila by all of us by sponsoring or tangkilikin natin yung mga expressions na ito.
Angeles, who also previously served in the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, admits that she has no plans on what to do next following her resignation as press secretary. But asked if she has plans on returning to the NCCA, Angeles said,
"We will see." Yun lang po ang masasabi ko, we will see.
NCCA Chairman Dr. Rene Escalante has confirmed that the chairmanship post will be vacant soon, but he says his replacement will also depend on whomever the president decides to appoint. For News 5, Laila Pangilinan, we are One News.
And that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more analysis. I'm Robbie Alampay.
The big story is also available via Signal Play app. Make a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News anytime, anywhere. I'm Gretchen Hall. Stay safe, Philippines.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.